What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, a slogan repeated so often it almost feels like a protective spell. But on the night of October 1st, 2017, that spell is going to break violently. Because in just a few minutes, Las Vegas will become the stage for the deadliest mass shooting in modern U.S. history. And the world will never look at Sin City the same way again. Tonight in this episode, we unravel the true story behind the tragedy that shattered the illusion of America's playground. Rising out of the Mojave Desert like a neon oasis, Las Vegas is a place where reality bends under the weight of excess. 42 million visitors pour into the city every year, drawn by casinos, concerts, and the promise that anything is possible under its endless lights. Sunday, October 1st, starts like any other on the Strip, the massive artery of Las Vegas Boulevard, where the biggest hotels and casinos on Earth stand shoulder to shoulder. The iconic sign, "Welcome to Fabulous Las Vegas," flickers like a siren, luring tourists into a world that never, ever stops. A few blocks away, the golden towers of the Mandalay Bay Hotel and Resort rise over the boulevard. Nearly 40 stories tall, with more than 3,000 rooms, and a sprawling 12,500 square meter casino. The complex feels like its own miniature kingdom. Inside, security guard Jesus Campos is wrapping up his shift. Earlier in the night, the hotel's control center asked him to check a set of alarms triggered on Hot SOS, the management system that handles every technical issue, from faulty sensors to doors left ajar. Nothing unusual, just another normal evening in Vegas. After inspecting the 30th floor, Campos heads toward the service staircase to finish his round on floor 32. But when he pushes the door that should lead into the hallway, the door refuses to move. It's jammed, blocked. That's not just odd, it's dangerous. Those stairwells are emergency exits. By safety standards, they must stay unlocked and accessible at all times. No exceptions. Startled, Campos heads back down, takes the guest elevator, and returns to the 32nd floor through the main hallway. The corridor is silent, lined with identical doors framed by soft yellow lights. At the far end lies the small lobby where the blocked stairwell door should open. He walks toward it, and there, screwed directly into the door frame, he spots a metal bracket, a crude, improvised device meant to keep the door shut. This isn't a mistake. Someone placed it there deliberately. Campos immediately picks up the emergency phone and reports the obstruction to hotel security. A technician is dispatched. But what none of them know yet is that this unassuming piece of metal is the first domino in a sequence that will unleash unimaginable horror. Across Las Vegas Boulevard, the atmosphere is completely different. At the Route 91 Harvest Festival, tens of thousands of country music fans gather under the open sky. It's the final night of the event, and headliner Jason Aldean has just stepped on stage. It's still warm. Phones are up. People are singing, drinking, dancing. A classic Vegas night. At 10:05 p.m., Aldean begins performing "When She Says Baby." Moments later, a sharp rattle echoes through the air, loud enough to cut through the music. Some festival goers glance around, confused. Fireworks? Malfunctioning speakers? Nobody reacts immediately. Then the band stops. Jason Aldean rushes off stage. The cracks return, louder, faster, relentless. Security realizes the truth before the crowd does. These are gunshots. Automatic gunshots. At 10:08 p.m., police radios explode with frantic reports. Multiple victims. Shots coming from an elevated position. Nobody knows exactly where. The festival grounds cover nearly 6 hectares of open space, wide, exposed, and with almost no cover. People near the stage hit the ground, screaming, crawling, waiting for the brief pauses between volleys to run for their lives. Officers are pinned down too, unable to advance under the constant barrage. And the nightmare is only just beginning. One officer goes down almost instantly, and in the confusion that follows, the number of wounded rises with terrifying speed. Panic ripples across the festival grounds like a shockwave, overwhelming everyone on site. Reinforcements arrive in waves. Ambulances pour into the area, and first responders begin pulling people toward any place that seems safer than the open field they're trapped in. But even with the chaos around them, with victims scattered everywhere and people screaming for help, another mission becomes just as urgent. They have to identify the shooter, whether it's one person or several, and stop the attack before the situation grows even worse. Police officers focus on this goal, but information is a tangled mess. Radio traffic is chaotic. Reports contradict one another. At this stage, the idea of a coordinated assault is not ruled out. Some officers think they might be facing multiple shooters, the kind of scenario that recalls Mumbai in 2008, or even the Bataclan attack in Paris in 2015. With so much uncertainty, every possibility seems plausible. The only priority is to locate the source of the gunfire as quickly as possible. But at 10:12 p.m., a full minute after the attack began, confusion still reigns. Nobody knows exactly where the shots are coming from, how many attackers are involved, or what direction they're firing toward. Some units rush toward the Tropicana after hearing gunfire. Others head to the Luxor, positioned directly across from the Las Vegas Village, to investigate another report. Then the Mandalay Bay is mentioned, and officers adjust immediately, redirecting all available units toward the hotel. 3 more minutes pass, and at 10:15 p.m., after 2 intense bursts, the gunfire suddenly stops. But adrenaline doesn't fade, not for the police, not for the medics, not for the thousands of people still fleeing. Civilian vehicles are commandeered to transport the wounded, who now number in the hundreds. Metal barricades are turned into makeshift stretchers. Victims are loaded into police cruisers and rushed toward hospitals as quickly as possible. In the span of 10 minutes, 15 bursts have been fired toward the festival grounds and surrounding streets. Over 1,000 rounds sent into the crowd and the Strip. Across the fake grass and concrete of the Las Vegas Village, among drinks dropped in panic, phones abandoned mid-recording, and decorations torn apart by fleeing bodies. People are only beginning to grasp the scale of what has just happened. Inside the Mandalay Bay, on the 32nd floor, Jesus Campos hears the gunfire but doesn't immediately recognize it. The sound is rhythmic, sharp, almost mechanical. something like a power drill cutting through steel. But within seconds, bullets punch through the door of room 32-135 and tear into the hallway walls. Campos throws himself into a small recess a few meters away, and only then does he feel the burning impact in his leg. He's been shot. Dizzy from pain, but still conscious, he grabs his radio and reports what he can. Gunfire coming from Suite 32-135. A few moments later, the technician who had been dispatched earlier steps off the elevator onto the 32nd floor. Stephen Schuck doesn't realize what he's walking into. He takes only a few steps before Campos shouts at him to get down. Another burst violently strikes the hallway. Schuck narrowly avoids being hit and manages to scramble into cover. At 10:11 p.m., he radios in the same information Campos just reported. The shooter is firing from inside the corner suite. Nearly 200 bullets have been fired into the hallway alone. Inside the room, the rapid, uninterrupted shots continue, but neither Campos nor Schuck can determine what direction the shooter is aiming at or how many weapons are involved. Meanwhile, on the ground below, officers finally begin piecing together the trajectory of the rounds. The angle, the height, the rhythm. It all points to a high floor in the Mandalay Bay. Some officers estimate it could be the 50th floor. Others think it's the 40th. Nobody knows for certain, but every sign now points upward. Security guards stationed at the entrance of the hotel, thinking at first that the shots came from outside, turn back immediately when police storm in with weapons drawn. Everything indicates the shooter is inside. Officer Cordell Hendricks and his trainee, Elif Varson, are among the first to arrive. They order every guest and every employee they encounter to take shelter. Together with 3 Mandalay Bay security officers, they climb to the 31st floor, where the gunfire from above is unmistakable, violent bursts echoing through the ceiling, seconds that feel stretched into minutes. Then at 10:15 p.m., the attack stops. The radios continue to crackle with updates, but the gunfire has gone silent. Campos and Schuck, who managed to retreat to the central foyer without being struck again, remain there, shaken and wounded, waiting for the first tactical teams to reach their floor. An improvised intervention team begins to form, a group of officers who happened to be nearby when the first calls came through. Sergeant Joshua Bitsko, Officer Dave Newton from the K-9 unit, and SWAT Officer Levi Hancock do not know each other, have never trained together, and have no established coordination. But in this moment, none of that matters. They all share a single objective: organize the response, locate the shooter, and put an end to the attack before he has the chance to fire again or disappear inside the hotel. The 3 officers take charge and move toward the 31st floor using the stairs. They are soon joined by other SWAT members, and together they begin clearing rooms one by one, evacuating the guests floor by floor as carefully and quickly as possible. Once the 31st is secured, they push upward through the stairwell toward the 32nd floor, where Officer Cordell Hendricks and the others have been waiting since the gunfire stopped. Shortly before 11 p.m., Bitsko and Hancock force the stairwell door open, removing the screws from the metal bracket Campos discovered earlier. When they enter the hallway, they immediately notice a housekeeping cart left abandoned. A small camera is hidden on top, propped beneath an upside-down plate, among the remains of a half-finished meal. Cables snake from the cart into room 32-134. The room connected internally to the suite next door, 32-135. For a moment, the officers freeze, unsure what they're looking at. The setup could easily be an improvised explosive device, a bomb rigged to detonate the moment someone steps too close. A quick inspection, however, allows them to rule out the threat. 40 minutes have passed since the last shots echoed across the strip. If the gunman is still inside, he may be waiting, wounded, or preparing something else entirely. The team advances slowly, every step tense with uncertainty. With experienced SWAT officers now on site, men trained specifically for these kinds of scenarios, a decision is finally made. They will breach the suite using explosives. Over the radios, officers instruct everyone on the floor to take cover. At 11:20 p.m., an explosive charge detonates, shuddering through the walls of the 32nd floor. The door to Suite 32-135 blows open. Inside, a thick cloud of gunpowder hangs in the air, burning the officers' throats as they enter. The scene looks like the inside of an armory. Rifles spread across the carpet, weapons stacked on the bar counter, more on the chairs, with magazines scattered everywhere. Some empty, some still loaded. There is so much equipment lying around that a few officers trip over firearms as they move deeper into the suite, clearing it room by room. At the center of the living room, near the bar, lies the body of a man motionless on his back. The shooter has taken his own life with a shot to the mouth. The officers continue their sweep, forcing open the door to room 32-134, which is connected internally. Inside, they find even more weapons, but no second suspect, no partner, no accomplice. The man lying on the carpet acted entirely alone, and in barely 10 minutes, he carried out what will be remembered as the deadliest mass shooting in the history of the United States. 60 lives lost, and more than 800 people injured. Following the tragedy, while the city of Las Vegas mourns its victims and tries to understand how such unimaginable violence could unfold, the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department begins a long and meticulous investigation, determined to reconstruct every step that led to such a catastrophic outcome. The shooter's identity is quickly confirmed. Stephen Paddock, born April 9th, 1953, a 64-year-old accountant and real estate investor. He comes from a family of 4 boys, raised primarily by their mother, Dolores Hudson, after their father, Benjamin Paddock, was arrested in 1960 for bank robbery. Stephen was only 7 at the time. Their father spent years in prison before dying in 1998, long removed from the lives of his children. Despite this turbulent family background, Stephen grew up without any apparent difficulty. Early on, he learned the value of independence and financial stability. In 1977, he completed a degree in management and went on to work several jobs. First at a postal agency, then at the IRS, the federal institution responsible for collecting taxes in the United States. Later, he founded a family real estate company with his mother and his brother Eric. Their business model was simple: buy properties, renovate them, then resell them for profit. People who worked with him described him as intelligent, methodical, and particularly skilled in accounting. Traits well suited to real estate investment. Opportunities multiplied quickly, and the family's profits grew accordingly, providing them with a comfortable lifestyle as they expanded their ventures. On a personal level, Paddock married twice, first between 1977 and 1979, then between 1985 and 1990. Both marriages ended amicably. Later, he began a long-term relationship with Marilu Danley. Together, they split their time between two homes in Nevada, one in Mesquite and the other in Reno, not far from the main highway that connects both cities. They traveled abroad, took cruises, and lived what appeared to be calm, uneventful life. Nothing about Stephen Paddock outwardly suggested instability or violence. He also had hobbies, ordinary ones at first glance. Like many Americans, he enjoyed casinos and gambling, especially video poker, a game widely popular in Las Vegas, and luck often favored him. During long nights spent in front of slot machines, usually dressed in loose sweatpants and flip-flops, he sometimes won extraordinary sums, occasionally up to $1 million in a single session. He was exactly the kind of gambler casinos adored: loyal, high-spending, and quiet. In return, hotels treated him with exceptional perks, priority services, room upgrades, and sometimes even free stays in luxurious suites, simply to encourage him to keep playing. Stephen Paddock was accustomed to this kind of treatment. Another of his interests was firearms. Over the course of his adult life, he owned roughly 30 guns, handguns and rifles, collected gradually since the early 1980s. In the United States, where access to powerful military-style weapons is legal and relatively easy, such a hobby isn't considered unusual. His relatives saw it as nothing more than a personal interest, a harmless pastime. But this hobby took a darker turn in 2016. Within a single year, Paddock purchased 55 additional firearms, rifles, accessories, and massive quantities of ammunition. All of it was perfectly legal. Marilu Danley, who lived with him and knew about his interest in weapons, did not grasp the scale or the sudden intensity of these purchases, and she did not worry about it. Around this same period, Paddock seemed more withdrawn. He had experienced some financial setbacks that weighed on him, and his behavior grew more distant. Still, nothing suggested a man planning violence. He declined antidepressant medication prescribed by his doctor, and instead relied on diazepam, better known as Valium, a common anti-anxiety drug often used to manage stress or depressive symptoms. None of these signs appeared alarming enough to raise concerns among those around him. On September 25, 2017, Stephen Paddock arrived at the Mandalay Bay, where he was immediately assigned a VIP suite on the 32nd floor, all the way at the end of a quiet hallway near the emergency stairwell. The suite consisted of a large bedroom and a spacious living area, furnished with armchairs, several couches, a bar counter, and a small kitchenette, all arranged in warm tones that made the room feel comfortable and discreet. Through the wide bay windows facing north, he had a clear, elevated view of the Luxor Hotel next door. the Strip stretching out in bright lines below, and, to the right, the grounds of the Las Vegas Village, where the Route 91 Harvest Festival was taking place. 2 days later, on September 27th, Paddock asked to be moved to another suite located at the far end of the southwest wing, one that offered a sweeping 180-degree panorama of the Strip, a vantage point far superior to the one he currently had. The staff was unable to fulfill the request, and the refusal visibly irritated him. Instead, on September 29th, he booked the adjacent room, 32134, under his girlfriend's name. This second room connected internally to his main suite, 32135, through a door between them, a convenient layout for someone who needed additional space. During the following days, he made repeated trips between his home in Mesquite and the Mandalay Bay, each time bringing more suitcases that hotel staff carried upstairs without question. It was a large amount of luggage for a single guest, but in luxury hotels, employees do not pry into the habits of wealthy clients as long as they behave normally. He stayed in contact with Marilou Danley, exchanging casual messages about ordinary things. He also interacted a few times with hotel staff, ordering several room service meals, often requesting that the carts be left inside the suite and asking for an extra mini fridge. When housekeeping came to change the sheets, he remained in the room, quietly typing on his laptop. Nothing in his behavior stood out to anyone. Staff members had seen far stranger customers in their careers. During the night between September 30th and October 1st, he went down to the casino to play video poker, as he often did, before returning to his room around sunrise. Later that day, he retrieved 2 more suitcases from his car, handed them to the valet, and brought them upstairs. He then placed one final room service order for lunch. Behind the closed doors of the suite, Stephen Paddock was now carrying out his final preparations. He started by installing a small camera inside the peephole of room 32135, giving him a live view of the hallway so no one could approach without him noticing. In room 32,134, he connected a laptop to the room service cart he had asked to keep outside the door. A second camera, a simple webcam, was hidden beneath an upside-down plate placed on top of the cart, giving him an additional angle on the corridor. From one suitcase after another, he began unpacking dozens of semi-automatic rifles, mainly AR-15 and AR-10, both common and relatively inexpensive weapons in the United States. Along with them, he had brought multiple bump stocks, devices that allow semi-automatic rifles to fire at a speed approaching that of fully automatic weapons, simply by maintaining steady pressure on the trigger, reaching 400 to 800 rounds per minute. He had already calculated the effective shooting distance of each rifle and had jotted down wind conditions and firing angles on a small piece of paper. The windows of his suite offered a nearly perfect firing line toward the Las Vegas Village concert area, roughly 500 meters away, well within range of the weapons he had selected. He laid out the 24 firearms he had brought, placing some near the windows, others aimed toward the doors, propping several of them on tripods or bipods to stabilize them. Cushions were placed on the floor to make shooting more comfortable. Later that afternoon, he quietly left his room carrying a power drill, and used it to secure the emergency stairwell door just beside 32,135, ensuring no one could enter the hallway from that direction without alerting him. He knew that during emergencies, police officers almost always use the stairs, not the elevators. To complete his setup, he broke 2 of the suite's windows using a small hammer, wrapped in tape to dampen the sound. His preparation was finished. Stephen Paddock waited until the final performance of the Route 91 Harvest Festival began at 10:05 p.m. As country singer Jason Aldean stepped onto the stage, Paddock picked up his first rifle and started firing into the crowd gathered below. Each time a magazine ran empty, he simply dropped the weapon, reached for another, and continued. He was briefly interrupted when the first security guard entered the hallway, and again a moment later when a second man appeared. To keep them at a distance, he turned away from the windows and fired directly through the door before resuming his attack. For 10 minutes, more than 1,000 rounds rained down onto the concert grounds. The panic below was overwhelming, with people fleeing in every direction as the sound of gunfire echoed across the strip. Police officers began converging on the Mandalay Bay. Inside his suite, he still had many rifles left and hundreds of rounds he had not yet fired. But Stephen Paddock chose to end the attack himself. He reached for a Smith & Wesson revolver, one of the few handguns he had brought with him, and shot himself in the middle of the suite, surrounded by the thick smell of gunpowder that still lingered in the air. But even with the timeline now clear and the method fully understood, one essential question remains unanswered. Why did a seemingly ordinary man with no criminal record and a stable routine carry out an act of such monstrous proportions? This is what investigators and psychologists attempted to untangle. The term mass shooting describes a killing carried out by a single attacker targeting a crowd. It is very different from serial murder or other forms of crime. A mass shooting generally involves at least 4 victims, killed in a short period of time, and within a confined area, almost always with firearms, because they are practical, fast, and devastating. This type of killer began appearing more frequently as semi-automatic and automatic weapons became widely accessible. Planning is another defining trait in these attacks. Stephen Paddock had been preparing for months. Every weapon he purchased between 2016 and 2017, every movement he made, the online searches he conducted, everything uncovered during the investigation pointed to a meticulously organized plan. He had even studied other potential targets without acting on them. In early August 2017, he booked a room overlooking a festival in Chicago, held from August 3rd to 6th. Later, during the Life is Beautiful music festival in downtown Las Vegas from September 22nd to 24th, he reserved a room at the Ogden Hotel between the 17th and the 28th and was seen bringing multiple suitcases upstairs. Both festivals were outdoors, stretched over several days, and in both cases he specifically asked for rooms with a view of the concert areas. But investigators were never able to determine whether he intended to attack there or whether the suitcases contained weapons. Had he hesitated? If he had, why? He also booked multiple stays at the Mandalay Bay in September, which may have allowed him to study the environment while blending in among other gamblers. Even his closest relatives only realized the truth after the massacre. So what drives someone to such extremes? How does a man with no criminal past, stable finances, and a quiet family life fire relentlessly into a crowd, fully aware of what he is doing? The motives behind mass shooters usually fall into several categories: political or extremist ideology, revenge, personal frustration, or the pursuit of notoriety, no matter the cost. Many leave manifestos or suicide notes, texts that sometimes inspire other killers. One well-known case is the Sandy Hook school shooting in 2012, whose perpetrator was obsessed with previous murderers. Another common pattern is a fascination with firearms and a God complex, the overwhelming desire to dominate others and feel superior. And although mass shootings represent only a tiny fraction of gun-related deaths in the US, 33 deaths versus more than 13,500 in 2017, they strike the public imagination with extraordinary force because they are horrifying, unpredictable, and seemingly impossible to stop. They always attract massive media attention. But in this case, investigators encountered a major obstacle. Stephen Paddock left no note, no message, no explanation. Documents claiming to be written by him circulated online, and ISIS even claimed responsibility, calling him one of their soldiers. But the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department confirmed that he had no link to any criminal organization or extremist movement. There was no evidence of admiration for past killers either. Nothing pointed to a particular ideology or pattern. Some suggested he may have had a psychotic episode, a theory that emerged when investigators learned he had been slightly depressed and drinking more than usual. He had received multiple prescriptions for diazepam, a widely used anti-anxiety medication, often given for depression or alcohol withdrawal. But depression and medication like diazepam do not explain mass murder. Others mentioned possible bipolar disorder or emotional regulation issues, but these ideas were unverified, based only on second-hand accounts, and impossible to confirm since Paddock took his own life. Psychology researchers strongly criticize the assumption that mental illness automatically leads to violence. There is no direct link. Paddock had never displayed violent behavior before the shooting, and toxicology reports showed he was not intoxicated during the attack. The theory of a mental breakdown does not hold up. Everything suggests Stephen Paddock was fully in control of his actions. So why did he do it? The truth is that the clues we have will never offer a complete explanation. The only certainty today is that Stephen Paddock premeditated his attack over a long period and was driven by something far deeper and more complex than the Las Vegas shooting alone. And now the question remains for you as well. Do you believe that stricter gun laws in the United States would truly be enough to prevent future tragedies like this one? The discussion is open, as always, in the comments, with respect and calm debate. If, despite the horror of tonight's story, you appreciated the way I told it, don't forget to leave a like, share the video, and of course, subscribe if you haven't already. I'll see you tomorrow for another case. And until then, remember this: man is a wolf to man. Far more often than not, it is your fellow human beings you should fear, not imaginary monsters, not folklore creatures, and certainly not the things we invent to scare ourselves. See you soon.